Welcome friends, welcome to this series on ECL model. As part of this series, we have already uploaded a video on our YouTube channel covering the scope of ECL. That is, ECL will be applicable to what all financial assets. And in that video, we understood that ECL will be applicable on all debt financial assets measured either at amortized cost or fair value through OCI. ECL will also be applicable to trade receivables and contract assets covered under IND AS 115. ECL will also be applicable to loan commitments and financial guarantee contracts, which are not measured at fair value through profit and loss. And we also understood that all the financial assets, equity financial assets or other financial assets, which are measured at fair value will not fall under the purview of ECL model, as fair value itself captures ECL as part of their fair value measurements. So guys, in this session, we are going to discuss the various approaches to ECL and which approach will be applicable to which financial asset. So guys, let us now understand what are the various approaches to this expected credit loss model. There are three such approaches. One is the general approach, second one is the simplified approach, and the third one is POCI approach. We will discuss about these approaches, but let us first understand few terminologies which are mentioned on this slide. That is 12-month ECL and lifetime ECL. So guys, what is a 12-month ECL? 12-month ECL means a possibility of a loan defaulting over 12 months period. And what is a lifetime ECL? Possibility of loan defaulting over the lifetime of the asset. So friends, let us now understand the first approach, that is the general approach. This approach requires an entity to track the changes in credit risk. This is a more complicated approach as compared to the simplified approach, wherein entity is not required to track changes in the credit risk. However, in general approach, the entity is required to track the changes in the credit risk. In the general approach, an entity has to determine whether it should apply either the 12-month ECL or the lifetime ECL. We have already discussed 12-month ECL means possibility of a loan defaulting over 12 months time frame. Entity has to determine whether it needs to apply a 12-month ECL or a lifetime ECL. Whereas in the simplified approach, each entity recognizes impairment loss allowance based on lifetime ECLs at each reporting date. It is mandatory under simplified approach to measure impairment loss based on lifetime ECL. So in a general approach, it is often referred to as a three-stage approach. There are three stages: stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Stage 1 means where there is no change in the credit risk, and stage 2 and 3 means there is a change in the credit risk. We will discuss about these stages in the subsequent video, but for the purpose of this session, we are not going to discuss that in detail. So general approach is also referred to as a three-stage approach because of the impact of the changes risk over the period of the asset on the ECL calculation. Simplified approach is applicable to trade receivables, which are short-term in nature, contract assets and lease receivables to provide for lifetime ECL. So guys, there is a third approach which is called POCI approach, purchased or originated credit impaired approach. This is applied to an asset that is credit impaired at the time of initial recognition. POCI, purchase or originated credit impaired, and this is applicable to all the assets which are credit impaired at the time of initial recognition. And for all such assets, an entity only recognizes the cumulative changes in lifetime ECL since the initial recognition of the asset. So guys, having discussed about the ECL approaches, let us now discuss which ECL approach will be applied to which financial asset. So guys, in case of a trade receivable that do not contain a significant financing component, simplified approach will be applicable, and this has been mandated by IND AS 109. That is, there is no choice. an entity has to apply a simplified approach for all trade receivables that do not contain a significant financial component. However, in case of a trade receivable that contains a significant financing component, it is a choice to be adopted by the entity whether to apply a general approach or to apply a simplified approach. In case of other debt financial instruments, which are measured either at amortized cost or fair value through OCL, a general approach has to be applied. And the same is the case with loan commitments and financial guarantee contracts not accounted for at fair value through P&L. That is, a general approach has to be applied for all loan commitments and financial guarantee contracts not accounted for at fair value through profit and loss. In case of a contract assets that fall under the purview of Ind AS 115, that is the revenue from contract with customers, we will again see whether there is any significant component involved or there is no significant component involved. So for all the contracts assets that do not contain a significant financial component, simplified approach is applicable, which is mandatory as per Ind AS 109. In case of contract assets that contain a significant financing component, an entity has a policy choice. It can apply a general approach or it can apply a simplified approach as well. So we can easily say, guys, in case of trade receivables and contract assets, if there is a significant financial component, entity has to choose between the general approach or the simplified approach. And in case of trade receivables and contract assets, where there is no significant financing component, simplified approach has to be applied. For all other debt financial assets, either measured at amortized cost or fair value through OCI, or loan commitments and financial guarantee contracts, which are not accounted for at fair value through profit and loss, general approach has to be applied. So guys, let us now discuss about the lease receivables. In this case also, there is a policy choice that an entity has to choose whether it needs to apply a general approach or a simplified approach. This policy change may be applied separately to finance or operating lease receivables. However, the policy choice made will apply to all finance leases or to all operating leases. In other words, the policy choice is not made on an individual lease basis. Either a general approach has to be applied for all the finance leases or the simplified approach has to be applied for all the finance leases. It cannot be that general approach is applied to one of the finance lease and simplified approach is applied to another finance lease. Same is the case with operating lease. So there is a policy choice which an entity has whether to apply a general approach or a simplified approach. In case of financial assets which are credit impaired on purchase or origination, POCI approach will be applied. And for all the financial instruments covered by impairment requirements of Ind AS 109, except those which we have already discussed, general approach will be applied. So guys, in this session, we have understood about the various approaches to ECL, that is general approach, simplified approach, and the POC approach, and what approach will be applicable to which financial asset. We will discuss about these approaches in detail in the subsequent videos. Till then, stay tuned.